Most founders and entrepreneurs are ADHD, and it's amazing the amount of them who are dyslexic as well. Reading, that man. If you're going to sell to me, do it in 2 sentences. If I get a LinkedIn message that is more than this, I'm not reading it. I started my first company, which is an app called Free Beer, and it was an absolute disaster. Everything that can go wrong went wrong. I even lost money on it. It was beautiful, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But there was this really old Welsh man called David John Williams. He turned to me and he said, Brad, if you haven't got the scars, you haven't got anything. And I think he's dead bloody right. You've got to fail in a startup 2 times at least to really figure out what not to do the next time.
What's the craziest thing you've ever had someone try to expense?
Oh mate, this is awesome. When I saw you write this question, I got so excited. I've got 2 answers for this, right? 1, I don't know how you meant to expense Coke.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Welcome back to the Run the Numbers podcast. I'm your host, CJ Gustafson, and I'm joined today by potentially the world's most interesting CFO and accountant, Brad Channer, CFO of UBIO. We talk about the UK tech ecosystem, the power of communication in finance, and why neurodiversity is an often overlooked asset in leadership. We're starting with UK tech, why the region has produced fewer 10 billion plus giants in the US, what's needed to keep top talent from heading across the Atlantic, and the one regulatory change Brad would make overnight to supercharge the industry. Then we get into communication and leadership, how Brad's background in acting, yes, this guy was a big-time actor on TV and on the UK's equivalent of Broadway, how that shaped his approach to boardroom discussions, the biggest mistakes CFOs make when explaining financials, and why some accountants never make it to the C-suite despite being brilliant on paper. And finally, we tackle neurodiversity and leadership, what it really means, the benefits of having neurodivergent team members, and how embracing different ways of thinking can be a competitive advantage. This one's packed with sharp insights, absolutely hilarious stories, candid reflections, and maybe even a Brian May story. That's right, a rock star. He met a rock star. Let's get into it. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. What does the future hold for business? Ask 9 experts and you'll get 10 answers. Bull market, bear market. Rates will rise, rates will fall. Can someone please just invent a crystal ball already? Until then, over 40,000 businesses have future-proofed their companies with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. Whether you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. If you listen to this podcast, you'll know I ask CFOs all the time to rep their tech stacks, and I would say almost every one of them use NetSuite. And that's what I would use too. Whether you're a company earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/metrics. The guide is free to you. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, it's netsuite.com/metrics. Please, guys, I really need this. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report with accuracy? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built solutions for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks with minimal IT involvement, enabling seamless collaboration across your organization's key financial workflows. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unmatched scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Visit planful.com/metrics to see how you can elevate your team this year with Planful. They will hook you up. It is planful.com/metrics. Tell me your boy CJ saying planful.com/metrics. I got a question for you. Is your billing system slowing you down? For most B2B SaaS companies, it's like a total mess. Manual invoices, revenue tracking workarounds, and endless spreadsheets that drain time and create errors. I've seen some ugly spreadsheets in my day. Your billing shouldn't feel like a never-ending math problem. That's where Subscript comes in, the modern billing and revenue recognition platform designed for SaaS finance teams that need both flexibility and accuracy. From automated invoicing and dunning to compliant, transparent revenue recognition and real-time analytics, Subscript eliminates manual work, reduces errors, and gives you a single source of truth for all your financial data. Finance teams using Subscript save over 20 hours a month. Wow. Closing the books faster and making smarter decisions with confidence. Don't let billing hold you back. Start scaling with ease. Learn more and book a free demo today at subscript.com. That's subscript.com. Tell me boy CJ sent you. They'll hook you up. Well, Brad, I feel sufficiently underwhelmed in my own shoes. I'm actually wearing sandals, but in my own shoes today because I'm interviewing an actor. And I don't know if I'm cut out for this podcast business to be on the line with you today.
I wouldn't say that, mate.
So you stumbled into accounting from being an actor. Do I have that right?
You did indeed, yeah. No, it was an accident. I didn't ever mean to be an accountant. That was definitely never on my career trajectory. Yeah, no. So I went to acting school back in Perth, in Australia, from WA. Did musical theatre school. Got a degree in spirit fingers, not jazz.
Nice.
Hands, spirit fingers. Yeah. So
yeah.
You know the difference, see. And I worked in kids television, believe it or not.
Seriously, because I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I feel like I'm an expert on kids' YouTube these days.
You know, it's really funny, right? When I was doing this kids show, I didn't have any kids or anything at the time. I was like 22, 23. And the lady who was producing it, she used to produce the Wiggles. And
I was going to say, like the Wiggles?
Yeah, like the Wiggles. And she used to say to me, I remember this one time we're doing this scene and I was getting really pissed off. It was really late. We'd been at it for a long time. I was exhausted. And we were making macaroni necklaces. You know, you get the string, right? And I'm going, and you put the macaroni around this. And she goes, no. You're not being, no, stop. You're not doing it. You know, you need to be bigger than that. And I remember being such a wanker going, it's just not real. I just don't want to do it because it's not real. And it's just not how someone would do it in real life. Anyway, fast forward now, I'm 40 with 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. And the other day, and I'm talking to an adult, of course, now, because I've talking to my children all day. And I'm like, yeah, so if you want, so today, let's go and do this, guys. Let's go to the museum. And I'm like, fuck, I've turned into that guy. She was right all those years ago.
It came, yeah, the sneaking suspicion came back. She was right all those years.
Yeah. So yeah.
Do you feel like you missed your window because these child YouTube like stars who I'm trying to think. We watch Steve and Maggie, we watch Miss Rachel, we watch Blippi. Like they're pulling down. I would have to think tens of millions of dollars a year.
Mate.
By the way, my wife calls me the Miss Rachel of finance. I can only aspire to that level of subject matter expertise. I want to talk about the UK tech scene for a bit. So I found that 15 to 20% of our listeners actually are based in the UK, which is nice. Predominantly US show, but I mean, we got finance leaders all over the globe. We're actually number 2 in Kenya for a business management podcast. So all 3 people there are tuning in, which is neat.
All 3. Well, you laugh, but Kenya is one of our big markets in Africa.
They actually have like extremely strong accounting networks there and professionals.
I was out at Cape Town. So I was saying to you before, I sit on the SEMA Council. We're a part of AICPA. In America, they own SEMA. So it's called the CGMA qualification. Because I'm a management accountant. I don't think you guys really know what management accountants are in the US.
What's a management accountant?
There you go. You see, it's a bit like, so it's an accountant that specializes in strategy. So a CFO. So it's about growth and it's about how you take something from here to here. I don't do your tax return. Let's put it that way. But I know the basics around tax, but I can write a growth strategy and financial model to do A and B and the change management around that to get there. So that's what a CGMA qualification is. So this is the new thing that AICPA are investing in because let's be honest, no one wants to be an accountant anymore because it's not sexy. Where management accountancy, sexy accounting. It's the fun stuff. It's the good stuff. It's what we do. It's that growing thing. It's that being a bit of everything, where being an auditor is not as sexy anymore.
It's not. It's a lot of my friends who started out being auditors or have been pinging me. Like, you figure if you're 10, 15 years out of college, they've been going that path and they're like, hey, what's it like being an operator? And they want to make the jump. It's hard for me to give them that 30-second onboarding explanation of what it's like. But I agree with you. They're coming in droves, I think, over to the tech side in particular. And I always complain that in college, Brad, nobody told me like being a finance person at a tech company was a thing. I just thought like either I went to like Big Four accounting or I became an investment banker, and those are like the only two routes.
See, I came into all this backwards. Because I was saying before, I did the acting thing, and then when I came, my show I did the kids' TV show. It got cancelled, and I then found myself back working in hospitality, pouring pints and serving people. And I bought in my lunch break, I bought a one-way ticket to the UK. I was living in Sydney at this time, and yeah, I moved here with maybe I think I had 2 weeks' notice, if that. Just got on a plane and left, and I came here with 40 quid in my back pocket, nowhere to live. I was staying on a couch with a stranger in Whitechapel. 40 quid in my back pocket. That was 16 years ago.
What gave you the confidence to take that leap? Because that's like it's a story that like motivates people, and then they probably think like, how do I make a change that big?
Well, I had a drive. My drive is I wanted to be an actor, and I just found myself, a performer. And not even that. Deep down in me, I knew there was something I had to get out, and I didn't know what it was. There was something to unlock. And funny enough, years ago when I was growing up and all the rest of it, I've always been an entrepreneur, and I've always been a salesman. I've always had the gift of the gab, and I've always been able to talk. So naturally, also being neurodiverse as well, acting falls into it, entrepreneurship, it all falls down that sort of line. It tracks these professions because we're ones who tend to not overthink things too much sometimes and do shoot from the hip a little bit more and say things as they are. So, it was this sort of, I just thought, well, you know what? I can sit here and pour pints the rest of, for the next 3 years and hope, well, fuck it. Let's just it's my choice to make my own destiny. So let's go out and bloody do it. So I bought my one-way ticket, arrived with absolutely nothing. And then, got a job getting people in nightclubs for £1 a person on the streets of Soho. I got an agent and then started working. But so no, I did that for years. And then after years of, auditioning and trying, and, I did some films and I did some West End shows and musicals. I went to the Royal Academy of Music and did the music theatre qualification there and sang for Sondheim and all this great bloody stuff. But 8 shows a week on the West End pays, or was then paying, about £500 a week. Well, my rent was 300, my travel was 120, and this was the top of my profession. It's like, well, what the fuck am I doing? Everyone was getting jobs working in hospitality or teaching, and I thought, well, fuck this, I don't want to do this. So in the day, I started my first company, which was an app called Free Beer, which gave you a free beer every day around London. And it was when smartphones sort of started taking off. And I started it with an American guy called Bram, funny enough. He lived in the UK. And it was an absolute disaster. Everything that can go wrong went wrong. I had all the stars up the wazoo. Scars, you name it, and we did it badly. I even lost money on it. It was beautiful. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I lived in Wales for a while, and I won't try to do a Welsh accent, but there was this really old Welsh man called David Ap John Williams, and he once turned to me. He's a very experienced business guy, and I was a lot younger, and he turned to me and he said, Brad, if you haven't got the scars, you haven't got anything. And I think he's dead bloody right. You've got to fail in a startup at least 3 or 4 times, 2 times at least, to really figure out what not to do the next time.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I got the entrepreneur bug, and then that bit me, and then I spun it off to a beer magazine, and then I sold the beer magazine, and then me and Bram took Free Beer to Florida, where you are now, I hear.
Yeah.
And We went to Florida, and it was America's so different to the UK when scaling companies. It was such a great learning lesson. Every one of your states is like a country in itself, and it has its own supply chains and its infrastructure, which is so much easier. Where in the UK, you have one infrastructure that's national, and that's it. We don't have states or anything. So it was good. Anyway, did that, and we sold it, and then I came back to the UK going, well, now what am I going to do with my life? And I started to meet these really cool people that had great ideas for businesses, but they couldn't raise money. And I had raised quite a bit of money already by this point for my own businesses. And I was like, oh, well, that's not going to work because of this. And I'm looking at their model and I'm like, well, no, you can't say you're going to make 20,000 sales in month 6, but you haven't spent any money on marketing. It's every action has a reaction. What the fuck? Like, come on, let's get this shit together. So I'd help them rewrite their whole business plan and their models and start helping them grow it, and then raise the money and then move on to the next one. And I was really enjoying it. And this person came to me and said, a mate of mine said, you're being an accountant, aren't you? And I said, fuck off. I'm not an accountant. I don't wear checkered shirts, and I can hold a conversation. Because I was thinking everyone's like an auditor, like really, or a tax specialist, And I said, no, I can communicate. Accountants can't, and I can. And that was my thing. Because I didn't realize at that point that there's lots of different types of accountants, and that's not the case at all. So anyway, cut long story short, I ended up falling into accountancy, and then I haven't looked back since, and then tech. So,
hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Hey, metrics fans, let me ask you something. Do you know what keeps CFOs and finance teams up at night? Well, it's not the complex analyses or forecasting models. It's the mind-numbing tasks of chasing receipts, reconciling expenses, and juggling 5 different systems just to track company spending. I was talking with a finance leader last week who calculated her team was spending an astonishing 20 hours weekly just on expense administration. That's nearly 1,000 hours annually on low-value tasks. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Rippling Spend. Rippling Spend is the only platform that automatically handles your entire company's spending in one unified system. What makes it different? It's built on Rippling's workforce platform. So when org changes happen, like someone getting promoted or changing departments, all approval workflows, access permissions, and policies update automatically. Picture this. When your marketing director goes on vacation, expense approvals don't sit in their inbox waiting for their return. Instead, they're automatically routed to the right backup approver. No manual delegation needed. Meanwhile, your finance team gets real-time visibility into all company spending with no more month-end surprises. As a Run the Numbers listener, you can get an exclusive demo showing exactly how much time your org would save. Just visit rippling.com/metrics to learn more. That's rippling.com/metrics. Do it, guys. Trust isn't earned, it's demanded. Whether you're a startup founder navigating your first audit or a seasoned security professional scaling your GRC program, proving your commitment to security has never been more critical or complex. That's where Vanta comes in. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks, like SOC 2 and ISO 27001. Centralized security workflows, complete questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Vanta not only saves you time, it can also save you money. A new IDC white paper found that Vanta customers achieve $535,000 per year in benefits, and the platform pays for itself in just 3 months. Join over 9,000 global companies like Atlassian, Cora, and Factory, who use Vanta to manage risk and improve security in real time. For a limited time, our audience gets $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/metrics. That's vanta.com/metrics for $1,000 off. Here's a question. When was the last time you really had time to focus on growth and not chasing contract renewals, tracking shadow IT spend, or explaining rising software costs to the board? Yikes. The truth is, traditional spend management is broken. If you're still piecing together data from 5 different systems just to figure out what you're actually spending, while vendors keep on pushing those auto renewals and price hikes, my friend, I got a solution for you. That's where Tropic comes in. Tropic is an intelligent spend management solution that consolidates your spend data and processes into one unified offering, enabling insights and decisive action. It doesn't just show you where the problems are, it helps you solve them. From spotting hidden optimization opportunities like duplicative spend, to automating those painful procurement workflows, to giving you the best market data that turns every vendor negotiation in your favor. Tropic combines smart insights with real human expertise to keep you ahead of the curve. And I can say firsthand because I've used them for over 2 years. Their SaaS platform helps me with price checks. It helps me keep my calendar organized of when renewals are coming up, and I can actually visualize it. And let me say, it saves me more than 10 hours a week on vendor management, and we've saved a ton on renewals. I'm walking into the boardroom with a lot more confidence. Isn't it time to turn your spend management into your competitive advantage? Visit tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics. That's tropicapp.io/mostlymetrics. I want to dig into two pieces here. The first piece is failing, because I've failed in a number of entrepreneurial ventures. And the second one is communication within finance. So I guess just to tackle the first one there, what did failing as an entrepreneur do for you? Because in the moment it sucks, but you said it was the best thing that ever happened to you.
Oh yeah. Well, I have a saying. It's not. I hate the word fail. I tell my son it's the F word. I hate the word failing because it's not failing. Failing. I hate the word failing because failing means you didn't learn from it. And I always like to say I wasn't successful because I learned from what I did wrong and never did it again. But I do it wrong sometimes again, and I learn again. But failing, to me, just always sounds like a horrible term. It always sounds like something that you've given up. Failing is giving up and not trying. It's the best thing because getting burned, you know what to suggest to your companies, clients, whoever you're working for. You know what not to do because you've done that, and you've got the best example because you've got the scars to prove it. I think one of the things that founders, especially in tech, so I'm sure it's the same in the US, but here, founders of tech companies and CEOs tend to be the brains behind the tech. Some of them, especially in early stage, they're what I would call owner managers of SMEs when I was doing stuff with those sort of people. So they're the passionate ones. Normally, they've got these great ideas. They're wonderful, but they look at us, the CFO, we're the glue, and they're grown up in the room to stick it all together, in a sense. They're not the master communicators. They're very smart. Like the guy I work for now, Marcus, he's amazing. Incredible guy. Incredible at tech. He's a really good leader. I think he's got his brain definitely screwed on. He knows what he's doing. I love working for him. But he doesn't have the experience in scaling companies because he's never done it before. And that's where we come in. And then having things under your belt you know what not to do is the one thing that I think is the best sales pitch. I actually say to the founders that I work for before I meet them about my failures, because it shows that I have got the experience and not just the CFO who came in and had one success. Because you always meet them. You always meet the one CEO, the one CFO who had the one company they ever looked after in their life and exited for 20 million quid and never work again, and then get consulting roles for the rest of their lives on some huge salary. And it's like, what do you actually know? You walked into a business that was really good and was all set up with a really good product that you managed to turn around and exit really quickly. But how much of that was your skill and how much of that was actually luck, Yeah. And I'm not just being jealous, but there is a part where, failing is falling flat in your face is the best thing because you know what not to do next time.
Man, that's so powerful. But you said it's the best sales pitch because, A, it's humanizing when you tell people that I've messed up stuff before, but also B, I think people pay you for the playbook you have so you can help implement it. And part of that playbook isn't saying what to do. It's saying, listen, I've opened up doors X, Y, and Z. You don't want to go there. Yeah,
100%. You don't want to go there. And this is why. And here's the 3 examples that I'm going to give you of not to do it. And guess what? I did 2 of them. And, I think you hit something really well on the head then, humanizing. And I think this is one thing as accountants, obviously that I always suggest to people who are accountants, you really have to think about is we have to act like humans. The reason why my sales pitch when I was doing consulting, as I was saying before, my sales pitch was, hi, my name's Brad. I'm not an accountant. And I used to pick up clients by saying that. And the whole reason was they would think of you could meet your accountants who don't humanize, right? They're the ones who would be like, they would talk to the founder and they'll be saying, oh, yes, we have to capitalize these intangible assets on the balance sheet because of blah. I mean, it's just a series of white noise for a founder. They don't know what you just said and they don't care because it's gobbledygook. You didn't say it like a human. I mean, we have to be humans and talk like humans.
Can you say more about communicating as an accountant? Because I've run into this problem before, especially with founders, where the accountant, who is very smart, will just blind the founder with their science. But you can tell, like, even though it's academically right, like you've completely lost the room.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the only person that matters is that founder or that boss or the person you're speaking with, and making them understand what the hell you're talking about. And then saying that in a way that they completely understand. So I've been asked to do these workshops a couple of times. In fact, I'm doing one in Birmingham. If anyone's bored and want your listeners it's got a really, what was it called? FAB. The Festival of Accounting and Bookkeeping.
Nothing like a good acronym to get accounting people going, though.
Anyway, they asked me, I'm doing it there if anyone's going to be there, listen to it. And
Accountants love a good acronym.
Of it. It's called How to Communicate in Finance, and non-finance people give a shit.
How to not be a robot.
Basically. And I basically talk about all the stuff I've learned in acting school and now how I use that every day in finance.
Give us a glimpse of that, because I want to talk about how you use your skills from acting in the world of accounting.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. Like, well, not really. It's just, so there's two parts to it. One part is I prepare everything like a script. So for instance, if I'm going into a meeting or I'm going into an event, I work out what I want from it, like I used to do from a script. So what's my super objective? What do I want overall from this, right? What's my objective? What do I want from you? Why are we communicating? Like, why are we actually even talking? What do I want? And to be honest, this is the hardest question as humans that we have to ask ourselves every day, and we never do. But every time we talk as humans or we interact with anyone, it's because we want something. And that is a thing that a lot of people struggle with, but it's true. From everyone from saying hello to someone walking down the street or just talking to my mother-in-law just there when my child ran in the room. I want something. And in acting, what we do is figure out in all of our scenes what that objective is. What do we want? Now, I say to people when you're going into a meeting, before you go into your meeting, why are you going into this meeting? What do you want to achieve? What's your objective? Now, the objective is what you can achieve in that meeting. Okay. So if it's a job interview, my objective isn't to get the job, because I'll be honest, they're probably not going to give me the job there and then in the meeting. But my objective might be to get a second interview, because that's possible. My super objective is to get the job, because that's the thing that I might not get, but I really want overall. So that's your super objective. And then I say, what's my action? That's how am I going to do it? What am I going to do? What's my transitive verb? Am I to flirt? Is it to seduce? Is it to question, to challenge, to educate? So I think of sometimes if I know the person I'm speaking with or their background or who they are from my research, I may change how I'm going to do it based on that. Then I have what's called my through phrase. So I take all of that and I put it into a 5-6 word sentence. And I write that on top of my bit of paper, and then I forget about everything else. And that's the hardest bit. And all I do is anytime I feel a bit nervous, self-conscious, if I'm a bit concerned, if I'm a bit worried, I think of my through phrase, and that is it. Those 5 or 6 words at the top of my page. And then I just be myself and then forget about everything, and then naturally would achieve that objective. So a good example, to put it back into finance, a working example is we had our board meeting a couple of weeks ago. We've produced a new business plan for this financial year. The chair was unhappy with a couple of parts of my reporting that she just couldn't understand. Basically, difference between some of our contracted and transactional MRR. So I had written a report to explain how my revenue recognition policy and then demonstrating that historically. So the first thing I did was work out what I wanted to achieve by writing this document, and that was to make her understand the difference between how I defined MRR and and why I call transactional as an MRR in this company, and explaining why against so how do I do that? And then I worked out my objective. So I worked out my action of how I was going to do that. And then I had a through phrase in my head. And then using that, now I know what I want. I built a model of all of our revenue from 2022 to 2025, demonstrating transactional, non-transactional, and why in different models and things. So then it told the story of what I was trying to achieve. So this morning, showed it to her, 5 minutes. She went, okay, that makes sense. That's good. I'm cool now.
That's brilliant. Brad, can you say more about understanding the audience that you're talking to? And maybe there's also a thread of like what they want out of something, because you mentioned like, what's my objective? You probably want to understand their objective.
I 100% want to understand their objective, because when it comes to things like change management, this is the most important part. And there's two ways to it. One, it's working out what you want. So what's especially when we're dealing with people who don't speak finance. This is the big one. I did a talk on this the other day with a bunch of CTOs, right? Chief tech officers, right? Not always the best for communicating.
Big budgets, few words.
Basically. And it's how, like, let's be honest. If you think of a tech company, a third of our costs probably go to cloud computing. So to figure out what infrastructure and how they're building their tech is really important. They're the ones who also come to us wanting money, but not being able to tell us why. So It was really funny. The one question I got asked the most in that was, how do I convince the CFO to give me more money? I love it. And I'm like, make a compelling business case and talk to him and talk to them and let them communicate with you and then be open. So I said, I say to people, okay, so if I'm communicating with someone like that, I have to work out a number of things. So it might be, what is it that is going to be, so let's say we're talking budgets, right? I've got to say it in a way that is going to affect them in their day-to-day jobs. So I can't go in talking about accounting terms or capitalization of this or that. I've got to go in with the brass tacks and saying, well, this is about them, their budget, talking in their language and things that will affect them if X didn't happen. So you have to make it about that person. There's a great book. Knowing who you're talking to is important and how they communicate. So there's a wonderful book. I'm rushing through this, sorry. Called The 5 Love Languages. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or your wife's ever.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it though.
It's a marriage counseling book, right?
Yeah.
I married a psychiatrist. Okay.
Got it.
First week of getting married, she's like, let's do this book. And I'm like, love, we just got married. Why do I have to do a marriage counseling book? Surely I'm not that bad of a husband, But it was great. Gary Chapman, that was his name. It talks about that we all have 5 ways we communicate as humans, right? And it's talking about in a romantic relationship, of course, but you got touch, which you can use your imagination. You've got positive affirmations, saying positive things to the other person, quality time, acts of service, and gifts, right? Now, I was listening to this audio book on a bus and I thought, you know what? We're missing a trick here. We could do this in business. It is so true. My old business partner with free beer, he used to come up from the Isle of Wight to London, and all he used to want to do was walk around Westminster. We would spend all friggin' day walking around and talking shop. It drove me nutting. I did not know why. All I wanted was him to sit down and help me with what I was building. He just wanted to walk and talk, and I figured it out. He's a quality time person. For him, he communicated best spending quality time with me and communicating like that to really get the thing across. Now, for me, I was been acts of service. I just wanted him to help me to get the bloody business plan finished or to get the model working. So it was completely different ways of communicating. Now, the idea of this is when you figure out how the other person communicates, you change the way you communicate to work with them. So I used to come home with a bunch of flowers for my wife. She would go, okay, thanks, because I'm a gift guy. And I didn't know it. For her, I used to make the lunches before we went to work, and she was really appreciative, and I couldn't figure out why, but she's an acts of service person, and I was doing it. So now I communicate by doing more acts of service. She communicates by giving more gifts, and then the communication's a lot more freer. We then talk a lot better, and then everyone's happy. Now, at work, my second, Mel, she's great. She is a positive affirmations person. So every time I want to talk to Mel or get something from Mel, I make sure that I lead off by telling her, and I don't lie, but good things. So I'll be like, you know what, thank you so much for the report you gave me the other day. That was awesome. That really saved bacon. Thank you so much for this work you did on that. This is awesome. It's really helpful. And by leading off and then I get a better response from her, and then she wants to do the things I want her to do. So in accounting terms, I might go to, I don't know, one of the guys who works, who I'll leave nameless at the moment, who I work with now from a tech side, who runs one of the tech teams with a big budget. And I'll say to him, oh, mate, these costs are, going up a bit. Now, I know for him, he is really shit hot on face-to-face, because he's a bit of a quality time person. So I don't just drop him a Slack message. I actually put a meeting in his diary and spend 10 minutes doing it face-to-face on Slack, on Google Meet. And I always get a much better reception doing that than if I just send him a Slack message.
That's an incredible explanation, and something that I'm realizing live, just synthesizing this, besides the marriage advice, which I'll have to pay you for later, is I've often caught myself communicating with people in a way that was easiest for me. And for me, I like to write things down in an email format so I can actually be clear with my thoughts, or send it in Slack and bundle it all up and be like, balls in your court now. But what I've found through trial and error is, especially with tech people, like my CTO would be like, hey, let's hop on and talk about this. I'm like, why would we talk about it? Like, I literally just spent a half hour writing this out for you. But it's because like I'm not being receptive of how they communicate.
Yeah. And also there's one more level, neurodiversity.
Say
We're
more.
in tech, man. So I'm ADHD, slightly Tourette'sy, and definitely dyslexic. Most founders and entrepreneurs are ADHD, and it's amazing the amount of them who are dyslexic as well. Reading, fuck that, man. If you wrote me anything, I love it when I get the what. By the way, anyone, please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. If you're going to sell to me, do it in 2 sentences. If I get a LinkedIn message that is more than this, I'm not reading it. It's like, it's hilarious. I love the ones that they talk about, I love them when the people who are selling me sales services, and then this is what they send me. I'm like, are you taking the piss? No one's going to read that, man. But it's that. It's like, if I send Marcus, anything, if I used to say this to anyone, if you're dealing with any founders or any CEOs, if you have to write a message that is longer than 3 or 4 dot points, don't write it.
Can you say more about that for people who are in finance, or people who in general just have a personality where they want to write it all out, and how to communicate with people who are either neurodivergent, as you mentioned, which there is a big overlap in tech, or someone who might, speak to computers better than people?
Yeah. And I deal with lots of those people who like to speak with computers better than people. And it's fine. You just have to ask questions, and then look, figuring out how the person you're working with communicates best is the best way to get things across. But at the end of the day, if you don't think about who you're speaking with and how they communicate, the change management on that may never happen. So if I'm trying to get something across to, as I was saying, so the tech geniuses I work with, right? Now, if I was trying to get something across to Marcus, who's definitely, neurodivergent, he's the tech genius, he's the coder, he's all of that. So he ticks all those boxes. Anything longer than 2 or 3 sentences, he won't read unless it's urgent and I really stress it, and he won't. And he will avoid confrontation. He'll avoid things like that because that's not him. It doesn't speak to him. So I will book in a meeting to discuss those in person with him if it's going to be longer than a certain bit. And then on the other hand, there's people who much prefer things written down, but I don't like writing them. So, I write like I talk. I use ChatGPT all the time. It's a lifesaver, mate. But, it's, don't, I think especially with founders, I only write things down in long emails when I need a legal trail.
Yeah. I save my writing for the board reports that I write now. You have quite the network of accountants. You're looked at as a leader in that space within the UK and now growing. And that's one of the reasons why I reached out to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thanks, man.
I was wondering if you could summarize for the accountants listening, what do you think are some of the reasons that accountants may not make it to the C-suite, even if they are smarter than their peers on paper?
Communication. That's it.
That's it.
So communication, and it's about thinking forward. I think it's the big difference between senior C-suites and the junior and accountants. Especially.
I was hoping you would say that, because there is a stigma that accountants can tell you what happened, but they can't tell you what will happen.
Oh, 100%. And this is it. And this is the hard thing. You guys in America, you're still getting the management accountancy thing and the CGMA thing. It's I always say when I do talks about it, is the management accountant is always looking into the future, because we don't do the bookkeeping, we don't do the auditing or anything like that. We do the forecasting, we look at it to learn from it, but we're all about what's going to happen tomorrow. Where when you do the auditing side of stuff, your job is to look at the history. That is your job, to look at the past. And that's okay, because that's an important part of it as well. But the C-suite, and especially with scale-ups and tech, it's about thinking ahead. We're thinking I'm doing the forecasting for 2027 right now, and how we're going to achieve that scale that we're going for, and working backwards. I'm not looking at what happened. I am looking a bit at what happened last week, because it's part of my job, but it's not where my focus is. And if you keep talking about the past too much, that's not building the strategy for the future.
Yeah. And I mentioned it earlier that I think people are paid for the playbooks they have to see around corners that others don't have, and also to use their experience to forecast what may happen within a range of probabilities in the future. Because I do think it's, to a certain extent, commoditized to be able to get someone who can tell you what happened. I mean, there are tons of fractional bookkeeping firms out there that can do it for you. But to have a true thought partner, you need to have somebody who can help you think into the future.
Yeah, and understand and know how to ask the right questions.
Oh, say more about that.
Yeah, because, it was one of your things on asking the right questions is so important, and not being scared to ask questions. I think one thing, especially with junior finance people, is there is a fear that if they ask questions, they're going to look like idiots and not know the answers. At the end of the day, the people that you're working with and you're surrounding yourself by, and all the different positions, especially in tech, and the tech geniuses you're working with, you have to ask as many questions as you possibly can, because they are the experts of what they do, not you. They know their businesses inside and out. You don't. You're learning them. You have to ask the questions. You're not being dumb by asking them. You need to ask them to figure out how it works, because the more understanding you have on how it works, the better results you're going to get. You can't do your job unless you know how it works.
What people also forget is that if you're in finance, management, accounting, I found this in FP&A. I felt like, Charlie and Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory with the golden ticket. Like, I had permission to go and ask whatever I wanted. And some of it was selfish. She's like, I'm curious. I'm going to go and ask the CTO about XYZ, like about this cloud computing stuff over here. But like, it's your job to ask questions. And you think that people are going to judge you for being stupid for asking it, but they look at you like, no, they're just trying to collect data. And so you kind of get a free pass.
Yeah, you do. My whole career, I've worked in scale-ups and these sort of, businesses. And I decided a little while ago, I finished with the company, and then I was working out who I might do something for next. And this opportunity came past to integrate some acquisitions into a really large edtech company, like very large. And I thought, you know what? Always wanted a big company under my belt, but it wasn't as a CFO. It was as a consultant for a year. And you know what? It was really interesting. I came in with my CFO energy, and I asked lots and lots of questions, and I ripped it apart, and I found out all the stuff that wasn't going right or wasn't working. And funny enough, they weren't appreciated. They weren't appreciative of it. And I found it really interesting. And no, all I did was ruffle feathers. Lots of Americans in this company as well. And all I did was ruffle feathers, continually ruffle feathers. Now, I'm the sort of person who doesn't give a shit about ruffling feathers, to be honest. I mean, it's my job, is the way I look at it. But what I realized was the larger the company, the more people who don't actually know what they're doing or what is underneath the covers. Someone put it to me the other day, actually, something very similar. I was reading an article that was written by one of the guys. Who was it? Was it the guy from Spotify or the guy from Netflix? One of those founders. And this is the advice he was giving: was don't hire seasoned. When you scale up and you're looking at hiring your first CFO or your first C-level, don't hire the seasoned ones that work for large companies, because they know fuck all.
I think that was Daniel Elk, because he was saying they'll come in and try to solve all your problems with just
That's
hiring
the
more
one.
people.
Yeah. And then they just hire more people, and they hire more people and more people and more people. And all you end up with these massive teams. And what it is large companies, and I'm not saying everyone, of course, so please don't sit there and troll me about this, but large companies attract insecure people in leadership roles. And there was another great one I listened to the other day, and it was one of these Instagrammers, and it was great. And a lot of people don't agree with this, but I think it's true. In large companies, he's like, if I could tell myself when I was young, if you go to a large company to work, you're not going to get a promotion. Because if you work really, really hard in a large company, why would they give you a promotion? Because you're doing a really good job. It's the shitter staff that get the promotions, because they need you to keep doing your job and doing it really, really well. So it's this whole, because they don't want to lose that really good worker. Because if you become a manager, suddenly you're going to be all about management and not doing the job that you were doing. And I thought, I never thought of it like that. And it's really true. Large company mentalities, things switch over at that point. So you get a whole bunch of people. But the joys of working with scale-ups or smaller companies and all the rest of it is taking that. Now, I don't know about you, but I'll much prefer to be the ballsy guy who can sit out there and make the big decisions and say, guys, you're doing this wrong. We've got to change this. This is not right. We have to do A, B, and C. What would happen if we did Y? That, to me, is the fun part of being an accountant. That's why I like working for SMEs and scale-ups,
And you've built a career doing that in the UK. I'm very much of the exact same mindset as you, Brad, within the US tech companies I've worked for. I've actually worked for one headquartered out of London. Funny enough, though, and this is part of what I want to talk to you about, they re-headquartered in the US after they got to a certain size. And so I'm wondering if there's like something culturally that you've noticed within companies in the UK, or because a lot of them end up leaving. I don't know why, but like, what's going on over there?
There's a couple of reasons. Funding. So there is funding here, and funding is good. We do have a nice investment market, but quite often when you take US money, if you take East or West Coast US money, there's usually a condition that you move the company to the US after a certain
That's a condition they'll put in there. Wow.
Yeah. So I know a couple of founders that have large startups, and that they've raised a lot of money in the States, and American investors want in America. There's always the tax reasons as well. I mean, we have a very high personal taxation rate. So, for instance, I'm in the top tax bracket, and I lose probably just below 50% of my wage every month to tax. So, if I'm a founder, it's much more advantageous to be in America if I was able to get those lovely American tax rates. So that's another one. Also, it's also seen if you're, if you're a lot later stage and looking at maybe an IPO. I mean, the UK stock market is not very good compared to the amount of money you can raise in America right now. And to be honest, with Trump in at the moment, it's a bit dangerous, isn't it? I mean, a part of me would think that maybe a US, if I had to choose now with an IPO, I'll be looking at America. I wouldn't look at the UK.
You'd mentioned this term tall poppy syndrome. What's that?
Oh, nice. Yeah, this is another thing this is a British thing. I was talking about this in I did mention that to you the other day. Yeah,
I have an Australian friend who's used that phrase too.
So basically, it all comes back to how Australia was populated. So the British suffer from this thing called the tall poppy syndrome. And after World War II, my grandfather fought for England. Everything was all bombed out. There was 8 of them living in a 2-bedroom house in Kilburn. And for £10, you could take your whole family to Australia. So they were called 10-pound poms. And so my grandfather, my dad was born, he was about 2 at the time. They all got in a boat, went off to Australia. And that's how Australia was populated, from UK and different European countries. And basically, in school, they taught us about this thing called tall poppy syndrome because the Australian government were trying to stamp it out. And this is how I learned about it. But basically, it's a very British thing. If you put your head, like the poppy, like the flower, above the other flowers, it's going to be chopped off. So if you say, I'm really good, I'm really great at this, or I've done this, someone's going to be right next to you to chop your head off of sticking it above the parapet. So if you stand up and say, I'm really good at something, someone will say, no, you're not, you shit. Or someone will find something to sabotage you because of it. A good example in business would be, there's this amazing company I'm doing some consulting for now. They're the biggest collection of neuroscience patient health data in the world. They have 20 billion data points on neuroscience, brain scans, and patient data health, right? Biggest in the world, work with Johnson & Johnson, Wellcome Trust, NHS, all these people have this big data point. Do you know how they start off their pitch? We're an Oxford University spin-out. And I said, why the fuck do you do that? Oh, well, we are. I said, who gives a shit? I said, you've just given the credit for what you've done to Oxford University. And that was 10 years ago. Like, no, you are the world's biggest and the world's biggest neuroscience, whatever, data depository in the world. That's your pitch, because you're saying, I am sorry before you've even started. And this is really, really British. Right. And that's one thing. This is why productivity doesn't exist. Now, you can actually see this throughout everything in Britain. So, for instance, let's have a look at the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He has this great speech. It was a great speech, the opposite. So basically, when he's passing the last budget, he was continually saying, working people do not have to pay the tax burden. Working people, working people. I work 60 hours a fucking week. To him, I'm not a working person because I earn over 100 grand a year. As soon as you earn over £100,000 a year here, they take away your tax-free threshold. So you lose all of your tax-free allowance as soon as you earn over 100,000, and any childcare hours or any other things from the government that everyone else gets. So they differentiate. If you work hard to earn lots of money, we'll cut you down. That's what it basically says.
Oof.
Tall poppy syndrome. So why do people want to stay here and be efficient workers? The efficiency in the UK labour market is terrible. We have very inefficient workers. They can't boost productivity in the UK, but the system is set up. So as soon as you get any better, we're going to take it all off you on tax. So why bother? Why would you?
And that's exactly what I was poking at from the outside in. I didn't want to be the person from the US trying to say
I'm an Aussie saying this, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I can see the tax differences on paper. I can see the funding differences it's reported on paper. But I'm like, I think there's a cultural element here with risk taking and being bold and standing out. That's different.
And it's not all British people. I'm not saying this. It's just very culturally inbuilt that the first thing they say is sorry instead of doing it. Now, Americans, you're a bit more. Americans are here. British are here. Aussies are somewhere in the middle. Not all Americans, but Americans are just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm just going to say it how it is. Aussies, we're a bit like that as well.
In America, you just say stuff at this point.
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, Brad, maybe gearing towards a close here, I want to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So we're going to have some fun. You're a successful CFO and entrepreneur. Can you give us an example of something you've messed up in your career before?
Oh, mate, I've messed lots of stuff up in my career.
Hit us with one.
So this was in the acting career. Thought it was very entertaining, and I wrote it down because I thought, yeah. See, I'm terrible with names. Now, as an Aussie, I get away with it because I can call everyone mate and love, and it's not patronizing.
Yeah, it's pretty natural.
It's good being an Aussie. Ham up the accent. So anyway, this one day, I was 18 years old. I was working at a Belgian beer cafe in Perth, and there was a guy that used to always come into the bar. It's a really nice man. And he used to serve him pints, and he knew I was mad about musical theatre, and he used to give me these old videotapes of different, Zero Mostel doing the original producers and all this sort of stuff. And showing my age because I said videotapes as well. Anyway, he said, look, a mate of mine from the UK because he was from Britain. He said, he's coming in and you should join us for lunch. His name's Brian May, and he's written this musical called We Will Rock You about Queen. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'll be great. So they came in for lunch, and I booked the afternoon off, and I came down and joined them. And I loved Queen, right? I had Queen CDs in my car. I was listening to it, but I only knew Freddie Mercury. I didn't know the names of any of the others. And I was also 18 and wet behind the ears, so I didn't do any research or anything. Anyway, I'm sitting there at lunch, and we're chatting away. And I said, "Oh, so why do you love Queen so much? What's the connection with you and Queen?" And just suddenly you can hear a pin drop. And he looked at me and he just said, I was in Queen. I'm the guitarist. The Queen was like, oh, fuck.
Oh.
And then I was like, oh, no. And then I was like, can I have a job in your show? And he went, no. He goes, and to fob me off, goes like, have you been to acting school? And I said, no, I'm trying to get into Whopper, which is the one in Perth, and blah, blah. And he goes, oh, go away and study and train, and maybe one day come back and see me and I'll give you a job. And I said, okay. Fast forward now 7 years, 7 years, and my mate is in We Will Rock You in London. And I'm now living in London, been to acting school, done my musical theatre bit, got invited to, I can't remember, one of these anniversary shows, or We Will Rock You, Brian May was playing, right? And then afterwards, they invited me to this cocktail bar for drinks, a rooftop across the road. So off I've gone. And I've gone upstairs, there's Brian May at the bar. And I said, Brian, mate, do you remember me? And he just said, no. And I said, do you remember like in Perth years ago when you were workshopping this with your high school mate? We had lunch. And that thing is, Brad, you're that bloody waiter. He didn't know who the fuck I was. I said, yeah, I've been to acting school now. Can I have a job? And he went, fuck off.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah. So that was the biggest punishment for always forgetting people's names. And I wish I could say that taught me a lesson to remember faces and names and to do it taught me one thing. Ever since then, I've always done my research before I go into meetings.
That's the best answer I've gotten to that question. I've asked it about 100 times.
Nice. I'll take that one.
All right. If you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
I'm not old. I'm not as old as you think you are. And stop end gaining. End gaining is this thing we learn in acting school. If you try really hard, I always put it down to the analogy of picking up the girl at the bar, right? Or playing golf, right? If you've ever played golf. If you try really, really hard to hit the ball, if you try really, really hard to pick up the girl at the bar, you will fail, right? But if you know what you want, I want to take her home, I want to hit the ball over there, and you forget about it and you swing, much better chance of success.
That's
You
great.
just be yourself and let go. And I say do the same in business and finance and sales, definitely. It's
Right.
about not knowing what you want and not trying. And that's the whole objective, super objective, action, through phrase. That's exactly what that is. Forget about it. Just know your through phrase, know you've done the work, and forget about it, and you'll succeed and be yourself.
There we go.
And that's what I wish I knew as a kid, because I thought I thought I was an old man, but I was only 25.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Can you walk me through your finance software stack? More of a technical question. What tools do you use to get the job done?
Oh, mate, I'm boring as hell. I'm old school. Xero and Excel/Google Sheets. That's it.
Okay. Gets the job done.
Yeah, man, that's it. Old school Google Sheets, any Xero, that sort of, you can't. Google Sheets / Excel. I mean, I was an Exceller. Google Sheets only because my current founder loves Google Sheets, so I've learned to equip and to change. But it's the same formulas. But I've never ever seen a piece of software that could be so versatile. So,
last one I got for you. What's the craziest thing you've ever had someone try to expense?
oh, mate, this is awesome. When I saw you write this question, I got so excited. I've got two answers for this, right? One, I don't know how you meant to expense Coke, but yes, I have had to find a way. I have had a founder once with a owner-managed business I consulted for once that was literally taking a lot of cash out of the cash point. And I remember I went up to him and I said, what's all this cash coming out for, mate? Oh, just buying a bit of Coke. Fucking beautiful. So
Hard to get that one through the
figuring
system.
out which account to put that one in. Yeah, the other one was this neon company I used to work for, who used to make big neon signs. And for years he had this Ford on the balance sheet, and I couldn't work out what the fraud was. And I kept saying to him, what is this? Because I've seen all your, these work cars, and I could see all that, and I can see the lease agreements for these, but I haven't been able to see this forward, mate. And he's like, oh yeah, it's all right. It's just at home, I don't take it out much. Okay, fine. This went on for about 6-7 months. And I remember I was doing the next set of end of year accounts. I was trying to finish them. And I just said, mate, I still haven't seen that forward, I don't really care, but where is it? And he goes, I know you well enough now, Brad. I said, okay, what? And he went, it's a boat. It's like, oh, fuck off. It was a boat.
Did you get to go on it at least? Have a couple pints?
No, I didn't. I don't think I'd want to. It was in Wales where it's cold and freezing, and I don't even want to in Wales for. But yeah, so that was another interesting one to get myself unattached from.
Brad, you were one of the most entertaining and well-spoken guests we've had on so far. I really want to thank you for your time and insights.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, CJ. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you. I'd love to be back. Invite me again if you want.
Absolutely. We'll do round 2. More stories.
Sounds like a plan.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.